Deep beneath the Colorado mountains, alarm bells echoed through the NORAD command center as screens flickered with impossible readings. 8 massive objects had appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system, moving with purpose toward the third planet from the sun. General Patricia Wells gripped her coffee mug tighter as the tracking data updated every few seconds, showing vessels larger than aircraft carriers approaching at speeds that defied conventional physics. The objects weren't following any known trajectory patterns, and their energy signatures were unlike anything in Earth's databases. "Ma'am, we're getting communication attempts from all 8 objects simultaneously," reported Lieutenant Commander James Park, his voice steady despite the unprecedented situation. "The signals are being broadcast on every frequency we monitor, in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and dozens of other languages." The main screen filled with a composite image that made everyone in the room hold their breath. 8 different alien beings, each representing what appeared to be entirely different species, stared down at Earth. With expressions that needed no translation, they meant business, and humanity was about to receive an ultimatum that would change everything. The first alien to speak was a towering insectoid creature with multifaceted eyes that reflected light like black diamonds. "I am Commander Thrix of the Hive Collective," the being announced, its voice carrying an undertone that suggested millions of identical voices speaking in unison. "We represent the Galactic Dominion, an alliance of 8 advanced civilizations that have brought order to this galaxy for over 10,000 years." Beside Thrix, a crystalline being that seemed to shift between solid and translucent states pulsed with internal light as it spoke. "I am Shard Prime Nexus of the Crystal Assembly," the creature continued the message. "Your species has been evaluated and found to possess certain qualities that make you suitable for incorporation into our empire." A third alien, appearing as a swirling mass of dark energy contained within a humanoid outline, stepped forward with movements that defied physics. "I am Wraith Lord Voros of the Shadow Collective," it intoned, its voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We offer you a choice that no other species in this galaxy has received." The remaining 5 aliens each introduced themselves in turn. Commander Scalix of the Reptilian Hegemony, whose green scales rippled with bioluminescent patterns. Forge Master Torque of the Machine Syndicate, a being that appeared to be part organic and part advanced technology. Admiral Aquan of the Deep Current Empire, whose translucent blue form seemed to contain an entire ocean. Prime Hunter Ravek of the Predator clans, whose multiple arms ended in razor-sharp claws. And finally, Elder Cyan Mentis of the Mind Collective, whose oversized cranium pulsed with visible neural activity. "Your species will surrender all weapons and submit to Dominion authority within 72 hours, Commander Thrix continued, the ultimatum delivered with the casual confidence of beings who had never encountered resistance. "You will provide tribute in the form of resources and population as determined by Dominion assessors." General Wells felt her jaw clench as the alien continued its demands. "Failure to comply will result in the complete sterilization of your planet and the extinction of your species," Thrix added with no more emotion than discussing the weather. "We have used this process to bring order to 97 worlds across 12 star systems." The communication ended abruptly, leaving the command center in stunned silence as the implications sank in. Earth had just been given an ultimatum by beings with technology that made humanity's greatest achievements look like stone tools. "General, we're receiving similar transmissions at every major government facility on the planet," Lieutenant Commander Park reported, his fingers flying across his console as updates streamed in. "The UN Security Council is convening an emergency session, and world leaders are requesting immediate military briefings." Wells turned to face her team, her expression hardening as years of military training kicked in. "Get me direct lines to the Pentagon, the Kremlin, NATO headquarters, and every major military installation on the planet," she ordered. "If these aliens think humanity will roll over and surrender, they're about to learn something about our species that they clearly didn't research thoroughly enough." Across the globe, similar scenes played out as governments and military organizations scrambled to respond to the unprecedented threat. In Geneva, the United Nations held an emergency session with representatives from every nation on Earth. In Moscow, the Kremlin's Situation Room buzzed with activity as Russian military leaders analyzed the alien technology. In Beijing, Chinese scientists worked frantically to understand the physics behind the alien vessels. What the 8 members of the Galactic Dominion had failed to realize was that humanity's greatest strength lay not in advanced technology or overwhelming firepower, but in something far more dangerous. When backed into a corner, humans didn't surrender. They adapted, improvised, and fought with a ferocity that had carried them from caves to the stars. Dr. Sarah Liu, head of xenobiology at the International Space Research Consortium, stared at the alien transmissions with growing excitement rather than fear. "Look at their body language, their speech patterns," she told her colleagues. "They're supremely confident, almost arrogant. They've done this so many times that it's become routine for them. That's supposed to make us feel better?" asked Dr. Marcus Reed, her chief researcher. "It means they're predictable," Liu replied, her mind already racing with possibilities. "They expect us to react like every other species they've conquered, with fear, with attempts at negotiation, with eventual surrender. But what if we don't follow their script?" Meanwhile, in military installations around the world, a different kind of preparation was beginning. Colonel Patricia Stewart at the Pentagon reviewed classified files on experimental weapon systems that had never been tested. General Vladimir Petrov in Moscow ordered the activation of dormant satellite networks that officially didn't exist. Admiral Chen Wei in the South China Sea began moving naval assets into positions that seemed random but followed carefully planned patterns. The aliens had given humanity 72 hours to surrender, assuming this would be more than enough time for fear and despair to break human resistance. They had conquered nearly 100 worlds using this same approach, and it had never failed, but they had never encountered a species that viewed impossible odds not as a reason to surrender, but as a challenge to overcome. They had never faced beings who responded to threats not with submission, but with anger that burned hotter with each passing hour. As the countdown began, something unexpected started happening across Earth. Instead of panic and despair, a cold fury began building in every major population center. News broadcasts showed not frightened civilians fleeing in terror, but ordinary people organizing, planning, and preparing to defend their world. The 8 aliens had made their ultimatum clear: submit or die. What they hadn't counted on was humanity's response, which was becoming equally clear with each passing hour. Come and try to take it in. Secure facilities around the globe, the brightest minds of humanity began working on problems they had never imagined they would face. How do you fight beings with technology centuries ahead of your own? How do you defend a planet against forces that have conquered nearly 100 worlds? The answer, they were beginning to realize, might not lie in matching alien technology, but in doing something the aliens clearly didn't expect: fighting dirty, thinking creatively, and never, ever giving up. The 72-hour countdown had begun, and humanity was about to show the Galactic Dominion why some species were better left alone. 48 hours remained when Dr. Elena Rodriguez made the discovery that would change everything. Working in her laboratory beneath the European Space Agency facility in Madrid, she had been analyzing fragments of an object that crashed in the Siberian wilderness 3 years earlier. Officially dismissed as space debris, but secretly studied by an international team of researchers. The fragments showed signs of technology far beyond human capabilities, with metal alloys that shouldn't exist according to terrestrial physics. More importantly, the wreckage contained what appeared to be a navigation system, with star charts showing routes between solar systems, suggesting that Earth had been visited before. "The material composition is fascinating," Rodriguez explained to the Emergency Scientific Council via encrypted video link. "These aliens use a form of crystalline matrix technology that amplifies energy exponentially, but there's a critical vulnerability. The crystals become unstable when exposed to specific electromagnetic frequencies." General Wells leaned forward in her chair at NORAD, surrounded by military advisors and scientists from every major nation. "On Earth, are you saying we can disrupt their technology? Better than that," Rodriguez replied, her excitement evident despite the dire circumstances. I believe we can turn their own power sources against them. The energy feedback could cascade through their entire ship systems if we can generate the right frequency pulse. Meanwhile, in workshops and factories across the globe, humanity's greatest asset was coming into play: adaptability. Within hours of the alien ultimatum, manufacturing facilities that had been producing consumer goods were retooling to create weapons and countermeasures based on the preliminary research data in Detroit. Automotive assembly lines began producing electromagnetic pulse generators designed to Rodriguez's specifications. In Shanghai, electronics factories started manufacturing frequency modulators that could disrupt alien communication systems. In Tokyo, robotics companies worked around the clock to create automated defense systems that could operate without computer networks, vulnerable to alien interference. The transformation was unprecedented. Humanity was converting its entire industrial capacity into a war machine in less than 2 days, something the Galactic Dominion's strategic assessments had calculated would take months for any civilization to accomplish. Colonel David Chen of the United States Space Force stood before a gathering of military leaders from every branch of service, from dozens of countries. Intelligence suggests the aliens rely heavily on energy weapons and force fields, he reported. Their previous conquests all involved civilizations that tried to match their technology directly. We're taking a different approach. The different approach was becoming clear as reports flooded in from military installations. Worldwide, instead of developing energy weapons to match alien capabilities, human forces were focusing on kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and mechanical systems that couldn't be disrupted by electromagnetic interference. The Romans didn't defeat their enemies by copying their weapons, observed General Alexandra Volkova from her command post in Moscow. They won by using tactics and technology their enemies didn't expect. We're going to apply the same principle on a planetary scale. Dr. Liu's xenobiology team had made their own breakthrough after analyzing every second of the alien transmission. Their body language and speech patterns suggest they've never encountered serious resistance, she reported. Look at how casually they delivered their ultimatum. They're so confident in their superiority that they haven't considered the possibility of failure. This observation led to a critical strategic decision. Instead of attempting to negotiate or appear threatening, humanity would maintain the appearance of a primitive, frightened civilization right up until the moment of attack. Let the aliens' arrogance work against them. In orbit around Earth, automated satellites that had been disguised as commercial communication arrays began repositioning themselves according to carefully calculated trajectories. These satellites, secretly equipped with kinetic weapon systems, would provide the first line of defense when the aliens moved into attack positions. Admiral Sandra Martinez of the Combined Fleet Operations coordinated naval movements that appeared random to outside observers but followed a precise pattern. Nuclear submarines positioned themselves at strategic points around the globe, not to launch missiles but to serve as communication relays for a network that could operate independently of any centralized command structure. The genius of the plan lay in its simplicity. If the aliens knocked out Earth's major military command centers, the defense would continue automatically through a distributed network of smaller installations, each capable of independent action. Dr. Rodriguez's team made another breakthrough when they successfully tested their electromagnetic pulse weapon on the remaining fragments of alien technology. The cascade effect is even more dramatic than we hoped, Moishi reported. A single pulse can cause a complete system shutdown that spreads through their entire network. But the most significant development came from an unexpected source. Dr. Jonas Gutierrez, a retired professor of medieval history, had been studying the alien's psychological profile when he noticed something crucial. Every civilization they've conquered shared the same characteristic, he explained to the assembled leaders. They all had centralized command structures and hierarchical societies. When the leadership surrendered, the entire population followed. But human societies are fundamentally different. How so? Asked General Wells. We're tribal, Gutierrez replied. Even in our modern global civilization, we maintain fierce loyalty to smaller groups, family, community, Nation. If one group surrenders, others will continue fighting. The aliens have never faced a species where destroying the central authority actually makes resistance stronger, not weaker. This insight led to a radical restructuring of Earth's defense strategy. Rather than coordinating all resistance through a single command, military planners created thousands of independent cells, each capable of continuing the fight even if every other group was eliminated. As the countdown entered its final day, reconnaissance satellites detected the alien fleet moving into attack formation, 8 massive vessels, each representing a different alien species, took positions around Earth's orbit. Their energy signatures indicated weapon systems charging for what they clearly expected to be a brief bombardment, followed by immediate surrender. What they found, instead, was a planet that had transformed itself into the galaxy's largest fortress. Every major city now bristled with concealed weapon systems. Every industrial facility had been converted into a weapons factory. Every human had become part of a defense network that spanned the entire globe. The aliens' strategic computers had calculated that conquering Earth would require minimal effort against a primitive species with nuclear-age technology. Their models showed a 98% probability of immediate surrender once humanity witnessed the aliens' overwhelming technological superiority. But the computers had been programmed based on data from previous conquests. Civilizations that had tried to match alien technology, or had simply given up when faced with impossible odds. The Galactic Dominion had never encountered a species that responded to technological disadvantage by changing the rules of engagement entirely. As the final hours ticked away, radio transmissions from the alien fleet revealed growing confusion among the 8 commanders. Their sensors detected what appeared to be massive military preparations across Earth's surface, but the readings made no sense according to their understanding of human capabilities. The primitives appeared to be constructing some form of planetary defense network, reported Shard Prime Nexus to his fellow commanders. However, our analysis indicates their technology should be incapable of threatening our vessels. Perhaps they are attempting to impress us with their futile preparations, suggested Commander Thrix. Many species engage in ritualistic displays of resistance before accepting inevitable defeat. What the aliens didn't understand was that humanity's preparations weren't designed to impress anyone. They were designed to kill. And, in less than 12 hours, the Galactic Dominion was about to discover why their perfect record of conquest was about to come to a very abrupt and violent end. Dawn broke over the Pacific Ocean when the first alien ship began its descent toward Earth, its crystalline hull refracting sunlight into prismatic patterns as Shard Prime Nexus prepared to demonstrate the futility of human resistance. The crystal assembly had conquered 47 worlds using the same psychological tactic, a display of overwhelming power that broke enemy morale before the real battle even began. Commander Thrix watched from his position above the Atlantic as his fellow Dominion members moved into attack formation. The Hive Collective's approach had always been methodical, sending wave after wave of identical drones until enemy defenses collapsed under sheer numbers. Today would be no different, except that the enemy was a primitive species that still used chemical propulsion and metal projectiles. Initiating first-phase bombardment, announced Wraithlord Voros as his shadow ship began channeling dark energy toward Earth's major population centers. The Shadow Collective's specialty was draining power from enemy installations, leaving civilizations helpless as their own. Technology turned against them. What happened next defied every strategic calculation the Galactic Dominion had made about Earth's defensive capabilities. The first surprise came when Shard Prime Nexus attempted to phase his vessel through Earth's upper atmosphere. Using the crystal assembly's signature ability to become incorporeal at will, instead of passing harmlessly through the planet's defensive grid, his ship suddenly solidified with violent force as hidden electromagnetic generators activated across the globe. Dr. Rodriguez watched her readings spike from the Madrid facility as her frequency modulators achieved perfect resonance with the alien crystal matrix. Phase lock successful, she reported to command centers worldwide. The crystalline vessel is now fully solid and vulnerable to conventional weapons. Nexus felt his ship shudder as kinetic projectiles struck his hull for the first time in his military career. Simple tungsten rods accelerated by magnetic rails were punching through crystal formations that had withstood energy weapons from dozens of advanced civilizations. Impossible, he transmitted to his fellow commanders. How are these primitives generating sufficient electromagnetic interference to disrupt our phase capabilities? The answer came in the form of coordinated strikes from orbital platforms that the aliens had dismissed as primitive communication satellites. What appeared to be simple metal structures were actually sophisticated weapons platforms, their true nature concealed by basic construction materials and obsolete technology signatures. Commander Thrix deployed his first wave of drone fighters, expecting to overwhelm Earth's defenses through sheer numerical superiority. The Hive Collective had never encountered resistance from a species that couldn't match their production capabilities, and their strategic doctrine relied on opponents running out of defensive resources. Instead, the drone swarm encountered something unprecedented, a defensive network that seemed to operate without centralized control, responding to threats. With perfect coordination, despite having no apparent command structure, Admiral Martinez coordinated the naval response from her flagship in the South China Sea as automated defense systems engaged the alien drones. All units, implement Protocol 7, she ordered, using code words that activated hidden weapon systems in military installations across the globe. The Protocol 7 activation revealed the true scope of humanity's preparations. Every major city had been secretly equipped with electromagnetic pulse generators tuned to Dr. Rodriguez's specifications. When the alien drones entered Earth's atmosphere, they flew into a coordinated EMP storm that fried their guidance systems instantly. Thrix watched in disbelief as thousands of his supposedly invincible drones simply fell from the sky like metallic rain. Report, he demanded of his tactical officers. Unknown energy interference is disrupting all drone neural networks, came the reply. The primitives appear to have developed some form of quantum disruption technology. The reality was much simpler and far more terrifying from the aliens' perspective. Humanity had analyzed their enemies' strengths and developed countermeasures that turned those advantages into weaknesses. Instead of trying to match superior alien technology, humans had found ways to make that technology work against itself. Wraith Lord Voros encountered his own shock when he attempted to drain power from Earth's electrical grid. His species had perfected the ability to absorb and redirect energy, making them nearly invulnerable to conventional attacks. But when he began siphoning power from human installations, the feedback nearly destroyed his vessel. Derlu smiled grimly from her research station as she observed the aliens' confusion. The energy feedback trap is working perfectly, she reported. We've been routing power through unstable fusion reactors deliberately designed to overload when drained. Every time they try to absorb our energy, they're getting a nuclear explosion channeled directly into their systems. Ray. First hour of combat shattered the Galactic Dominion's confidence as strategy after strategy failed against human countermeasures. The reptilian hegemony's heat-seeking weapons couldn't lock onto targets that had been coated with thermal dampening compounds. The Machine Syndicate's electronic warfare systems found only hardened mechanical devices that operated without computer chips, but the most devastating surprise came when the aliens attempted to establish communication jamming to prevent human coordination. Instead of disrupting Earth's defenses, their interference activated hidden transmitters that began broadcasting on frequencies the aliens themselves used for ship-to-ship communication. Colonel Chen had spent months developing this particular trap. Their communication systems are quantum entangled, he explained to his technical staff. Once we identified their frequencies, we could inject false signals directly into their network. Now every ship in their fleet is receiving contradictory orders simultaneously. The result was chaos throughout the Dominion fleet as vessels received commands to attack positions their allies were defending, retreat from areas they were supposed to advance toward, and change formation in ways that left them vulnerable to human counterattacks. Admiral Aquan of the Deep Current Empire found his usually flawless coordination with other Dominion forces completely disrupted. Something is interfering with our quantum communication matrix, he reported to his fellow commanders. I'm receiving attack orders for targets that don't exist and retreat commands for positions we haven't occupied. Prime Hunter Ravek of the Predator clans discovered that his species' greatest advantage, superior reflexes and combat instincts, meant nothing when human weapon systems operated faster than biological neural networks could process. Automated defense platforms tracked and engaged his fighters with precision that exceeded even Predator reaction times. The most psychologically damaging moment came when Elder Scienmentis of the Mind Collective attempted to use telepathic influence on human defenders. His species had conquered dozens of worlds by dominating enemy leadership through mental control, forcing civilizations to surrender by turning their own commanders against them. Instead of finding vulnerable minds susceptible to alien influence, Mentis encountered something that no member of the Mind Collective had experienced in thousands of years: active mental resistance that grew stronger under pressure. Dr. Gutierrez had prepared humanity for this possibility, based on his analysis of the aliens' psychological profiles. Mental resistance techniques have been distributed to all command personnel, he had reported weeks earlier. If they try telepathic attack, they'll find minds that have been trained to fight back. The result was a psychic feedback loop that sent Mentis reeling as human defenders not only resisted his mental intrusion, but actively projected their own aggressive thoughts back at him. For the first time in his species' history, a Mind Collective member experienced the sensation of fear. As the first day of combat drew to a close, the 8 commanders of the Galactic Dominion found themselves facing a situation none of their strategic computers had predicted. A primitive species that was not only resisting their attack but actually winning. Status report, demanded Commander Thrix during an emergency conference of Dominion leadership. The reports were uniformly devastating. 30% of the Hive drones destroyed, the Crystal Assembly flagship trapped in solid form and taking heavy damage, Shadow Collective energy drain tactics backfiring catastrophically, and every other member of the Dominion experiencing similar reversals. "How is this possible?" asked Shard Prime Nexus. "Our intelligence indicated a species barely capable of interplanetary travel. The primitives are not fighting the war we expected," observed Forge Master Torque. "They appear to have developed countermeasures specifically designed to exploit our tactical advantages." What the aliens were beginning to understand was that humanity had done something unprecedented in galactic history. Instead of trying to match superior enemy capabilities, humans had studied their opponents and developed strategies that turned alien strengths into fatal weaknesses. The first blood had been drawn, and it wasn't human. 24 hours into the battle, Admiral Aquan of the Deep Current Empire made a discovery that terrified him more than any weapon the humans had deployed. They were learning and adapting faster than his strategic computers could calculate. Countermeasures. Every tactic the Dominion forces used was met with an effective response within hours, sometimes minutes. The realization came when Aquan attempted to use his species' liquid form to infiltrate human installations through water systems. The Deep Current Empire had conquered 17 aquatic worlds using this exact strategy, flowing through pipes and conduits to attack enemies from within their own fortifications. Instead of finding vulnerable infrastructure, Aquan encountered water systems that had been deliberately contaminated with compounds that solidified his liquid form on contact. Worse, the humans had somehow managed to make the contamination spread through his connection to other deep current forces, effectively turning his own infiltration network into a trap doctor. Rodriguez monitored the aliens' confusion from her laboratory as chemical sensors detected the solidification process. "The molecular bonding agent is working exactly as predicted," she reported to military commanders. "Their liquid forms become increasingly rigid with each exposure, and the effect compounds exponentially." What Aquan didn't understand was that humanity had spent months analyzing every fragment of alien technology they could find, developing countermeasures not just for known capabilities but for logical extensions of those abilities. Human scientists had assumed liquid aliens would try infiltration tactics and prepared accordingly. The horror deepened when Aquan realized that human forces were now using his own solidified troops as weapons. The rigid forms of deep current warriors were being launched from magnetic accelerators as kinetic projectiles. Their own people turned into ammunition against their allies. Meanwhile, Commander Thrix faced a crisis that challenged everything the Hive Collective understood about warfare. Their supposedly perfect coordination was being systematically dismantled by humans who seemed to predict every tactical decision before it was made. The breakthrough had come from an unexpected source, Dr. Amanda Foster, a professor of sociology who had been studying insect behavior for decades. Hive minds are incredibly efficient but also predictable, she had explained to military planners. Once you understand their decision-making patterns, you can anticipate their moves several steps ahead. Foster's research had identified key behavioral triggers in the Hive Collective's tactical doctrine. When faced with specific defensive formations, the aliens would invariably respond with predetermined counter-strategies that human forces were now prepared to exploit. Their coordination is their weakness, Foster observed as she watched battle data stream across her monitors. They can't deviate from optimal tactics because their hive mind prevents individual initiative. We've essentially turned them into the galaxy's most sophisticated, predictable enemy. The result was devastating for Thrix as human forces began laying traps that exploited the hive's inability to make unorthodox tactical decisions. Defensive positions that appeared vulnerable drew alien attacks into carefully prepared kill zones, while feints and diversions manipulated the hive mind into wasting resources on phantom threats. Prime Hunter Ravik of the Predator clans discovered his own nightmare when he attempted to engage human forces in direct combat. His species had evolved to be the perfect hunters, with reflexes, strength, and sensory abilities that surpassed any known biological form. But humans weren't fighting as biological entities. Colonel Lisa Stone had pioneered the exoskeleton warfare program after studying Predator capabilities. They're faster and stronger than any human could ever be, she had reported to the Pentagon. So we won't fight them as humans. We'll fight them as something else entirely. The exoskeletons were crude by alien standards but incorporated a crucial advantage. They operated on mechanical systems that responded faster than biological neural networks. When Predator warriors attempted to use their superior reflexes, they found themselves fighting machines that could react in microseconds rather than milliseconds. Ravik experienced the impossible sensation of being outmaneuvered by supposedly inferior beings, as human soldiers in mechanical suits anticipated and countered his every move. How are these primitives achieving reaction times that exceed our biological capabilities? He demanded of his tactical officers. The mechanical augmentation appears to bypass their neural limitations, came the reply. They are no longer fighting as the species we analyzed. The deeper horror was that humans weren't just matching Predator capabilities. They were exceeding them through combination tactics that no pure hunter species had ever developed. While Predators fought as individuals, even in groups, humans operated as integrated units where each member's mechanical enhancements complemented the others. Elder Cyan Mentis faced perhaps the most psychologically disturbing development when he realized that human mental resistance wasn't just defensive. They were actively projecting aggressive thoughts back at him with increasing intensity and coordination. Dr. Gutierrez had spent weeks developing what he called cognitive warfare, based on analysis of mind collective capabilities. If they can project thoughts into our minds, he had reasoned, then our minds should be able to project thoughts back. The question is whether we can make our thoughts more aggressive than theirs. The answer was terrifying from Mentis's perspective. Human thoughts weren't just more aggressive, they were chaotic, unpredictable, and seemed to multiply in intensity when focused. Every attempt at mental domination resulted in feedback that felt like psychological warfare conducted by an entire angry civilization. The primitive minds are not behaving according to any known neural patterns, Mentis reported to his fellow commanders. Their thought processes appear to intensify under mental pressure rather than breaking down. It's as if they become more dangerous when threatened, Forge Master Torque of the Machine Syndicate encountered his own version of human adaptability when he attempted to hack Earth's computer networks. His species had perfected the integration of organic intelligence with mechanical systems, allowing them to interface directly with any technological civilization's infrastructure. But when Torque attempted to penetrate human networks, he found systems that seemed designed to waste his time and resources. Instead of the centralized computer networks his species expected, Earth's infrastructure consisted of millions of independent systems that operated on different protocols, used incompatible software, and seemed to have been deliberately designed to resist any attempt at unified control. Their technology is incredibly primitive, but also incredibly diverse. Torque reported in frustration. Every installation uses different systems. There's no universal protocol to exploit. It's like trying to conduct a symphony where every instrument is playing a different song. The reality was that humanity's chaotic approach to technology development, with hundreds of competing standards, incompatible systems, and redundant infrastructure, had accidentally created the perfect defense against technological infiltration by any species that expected logical, efficient network architecture. Shard Prime Nexus discovered that his phase lock problems were only the beginning when human forces began using his own crystalline technology against him. The electromagnetic pulse weapons that kept his ship solid also disrupted his ability to self-repair. And worse, humans had somehow learned to manipulate the frequency patterns to cause his crystal matrices to resonate destructively. Dr. Rodriguez had made the breakthrough while studying captured crystal fragments. Their entire ship is essentially one massive crystal formation. She had explained, if we can induce harmonic resonance at the right frequency, we can make their hull vibrate itself apart. The result was spectacular and terrifying as Nexus watched sections of his supposedly invincible vessel begin to crack and shatter from internal vibrations. The primitives have somehow learned to weaponize our own structural technology against us. He transmitted to the other Dominion commanders. Wraith Lord Voros faced perhaps the most complete reversal of fortune when his energy-draining abilities became a liability rather than an advantage. Human forces had begun deliberately overloading their power systems whenever his shadow ship approached, turning every energy drain attempt into a potential nuclear explosion. They are using their own technology as weapons against us, Voros reported in disbelief. Every power source on the planet appears to be rigged to overload when drained. They have turned their entire civilization into a gigantic, explosive trap. As the second day of combat began, the 8 commanders of the Galactic Dominion faced a reality that challenged everything they understood about warfare. They were losing to a species they had dismissed as primitive, and worse, they were losing because their technological superiority was being systematically turned against them. Emergency Strategic Conference, demanded Commander Thrix. We need to reassess our entire approach to this conquest. But reassessment required time, and time was something the aliens were rapidly running out of. Human forces weren't just defending anymore, they were beginning to counterattack. And their methods were becoming more creative and devastating with each passing hour. The tide had turned, and the Galactic Dominion was about to discover that humanity's fury was just getting started. 72 hours after the initial ultimatum, something unprecedented in galactic history began to unfold. Humanity stopped playing defense and started hunting the hunters. Across Earth's surface, civilian populations that the Galactic Dominion had expected to cower in fear were instead organizing into combat units armed with weapons specifically designed to kill aliens. Maria Santos, a factory worker from Sao Paulo, hefted an electromagnetic pulse rifle that her manufacturing plant had produced just 2 days earlier. Like millions of other humans worldwide, she had volunteered for combat training using equipment reverse-engineered from alien technology. They wanted us to surrender, she told her squad as they prepared to assault a Predator clan forward position. Time to show them what surrender means to a human. The Predator warriors who had established the forward base expected to face frightened civilians armed with primitive weapons. Instead, they encountered organized assault teams using tactics specifically designed to exploit Predator psychology, and biology Dr. Foster's behavioral analysis had revealed a critical weakness in the Predator clan's psychology. Their hunting instincts made them vulnerable to prey that fought back in unexpected ways. Predators are adapted to chase fleeing prey, she had explained in training broadcasts. They're psychologically unprepared for prey that hunts them back. Prime Hunter Ravek received panicked communications from his ground forces as human civilians began using pack tactics that turned his warriors' superior individual capabilities into a disadvantage. The prey species is demonstrating organized aggression patterns that exceed our tactical models, reported his field commander. They appear to be treating us as the hunted rather than the hunters. The psychological impact was devastating. Predator warriors who had never experienced fear began retreating from engagements with beings they had considered inferior. Worse, human forces seemed to understand exactly how to maximize the psychological damage. Commander Stone's exoskeleton troops had developed new tactics based on predator behavioral patterns. Instead of trying to match alien speed and strength, human forces used overwhelming numerical superiority combined with mechanical precision to systematically eliminate predator advantages, surround and overwhelm. Stone ordered her battalion as they engaged a predator strike team. Their individuals, even in groups, were a coordinated military machine. Use that. The results spoke for themselves as predator forces found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who operated as integrated units rather than competing individuals. Human soldiers didn't try to outfight predator warriors one-on-one. They used coordinated attacks that made individual combat skills irrelevant. Meanwhile, in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean, Admiral Martinez coordinated a submarine assault on the Deep Current Empire's aquatic forces, using tactics that turned their liquid nature into a critical vulnerability. Deploy thermal charges at designated coordinates. Martinez ordered her submarine commanders. Remember, they're liquid. That means they conduct heat better than any solid enemy we've ever faced. The Deep Current forces discovered that their ability to flow through water became a death trap when humans began superheating entire sections of ocean using underwater nuclear reactors. Admiral Aquan watched in horror as his warriors literally boiled alive in their own liquid forms, unable to escape water that had become their prison. Impossible, Aquan transmitted as his forces suffered casualties unlike anything in deep current military history. How are these primitives generating sufficient thermal energy to heat entire ocean sectors? The answer lay in humanity's willingness to sacrifice their own infrastructure to win. Nuclear power plants that had once provided electricity to coastal cities were now being deliberately overloaded to create thermal kill zones that made Earth's oceans uninhabitable for liquid-form aliens. Dr. Liu coordinated the oceanic warfare program from her marine biology laboratory. Their liquid form makes them incredibly efficient conductors. She explained to naval commanders, heat, electricity, chemical agents. Anything we introduce to the water affects them far more dramatically than it would affect solid enemies. The strategy was working beyond all expectations as deep current forces found themselves trapped in their own element. Water, which had always been their greatest advantage, now carried every weapon humanity deployed directly into their liquid bodies. Elder Scion Mentis encountered an even more disturbing development when he realized that human mental resistance had evolved into something far more dangerous. Active psychic warfare conducted by an entire species that seemed to grow more telepathically aggressive under pressure. Professor Gutierrez had made a breakthrough in understanding human neural responses to telepathic attack. Under mental assault, human brain activity doesn't decrease, he had observed. It increases exponentially. We're not just resisting their thoughts, we're overwhelming them with our own. The result was a feedback loop that challenged everything the Mind Collective understood about telepathic warfare. Instead of dominating human minds, Mentis found himself subjected to the collective anger, determination, and fury of 8 billion humans who had been pushed beyond their breaking point. The primitive minds are coordinating their thought patterns, Mentis reported in growing panic. They appear to be conducting some form of species-wide telepathic assault. I'm detecting coordinated aggressive thoughts from every population center on the planet. The reality was even more terrifying from the alien perspective. Humanity wasn't just resisting telepathic domination, they were learning to use it as a weapon. Every human mind that Mentis had attempted to control was now actively projecting violent thoughts back at him with increasing intensity. Commander Thrix faced his own nightmare as human forces began turning the Hive Collective's perfect coordination against itself. Dr. Foster's team had developed what they called Hive disruption protocols that introduced false information into the aliens' decision-making network. Their coordination depends on perfect information sharing, Foster explained to military commanders, "If we can inject false data into their network, we can make their perfect coordination work against them." The technique was devastatingly effective. Human forces began broadcasting fake signals on Hive communication frequencies, causing entire swarms of alien drones to attack their own positions, retreat from successful advances, and follow tactical orders that led them directly into prepared ambushes. Thrix experienced the impossible sensation of his own forces becoming unreliable as corrupted information spread through the Hive network faster than it could be corrected. "Something is contaminating our coordination matrix," he reported to the other Dominion commanders. "False tactical data is propagating through our decision network." Forgemaster Torque discovered that his integration of organic and mechanical systems, the Machine Syndicate's greatest strength, had become a critical vulnerability when facing enemies who understood both biological and technological warfare. Human forces had developed computer viruses specifically designed to attack hybrid organic-mechanical systems. Unlike conventional malware, these programs targeted the biological components of Machine Syndicate technology, causing organic neural networks to reject their mechanical augmentations. "The primitives have created some form of biomechanical warfare agent," Torque reported. As his own augmented systems began malfunctioning, "It appears to attack the interface between organic and artificial components." Dr. Rodriguez had spent weeks developing what she called rejection viruses, based on studies of organ transplant failures. "Their technology depends on perfect integration between biological and mechanical systems," she had explained. "If we can cause biological rejection of mechanical components, their entire hybrid system fails." The results exceeded all expectations as Machine Syndicate forces began experiencing catastrophic system failures when their organic components literally rejected their mechanical augmentations. Warriors who had been seamlessly integrated beings became walking battlegrounds between their own biological and artificial parts. Shard Prime Nexus found his crystalline vessel continuing to deteriorate as human forces refined their harmonic resonance weapons. But the psychological impact was even more devastating than the physical damage. His supposedly invincible flagship was being systematically dismantled by beings using acoustic weapons that wouldn't have impressed a medieval army. Status report on hull integrity. Nexus demanded from his engineering officers. "Critical structural failure in sectors 7 through 15, came the reply. "The harmonic bombardment is causing cascade resonance throughout the entire crystal matrix. At current rate of deterioration, complete structural collapse is inevitable within 6 hours." The crystal assembly had never encountered enemies who could turn their own advanced materials into weapons against them. Human forces were literally using the aliens' technological superiority to destroy their vessels from the inside out. Wraith Lord Voros faced perhaps the most complete tactical reversal, as his energy-draining abilities became a guaranteed death sentence. Human forces had rigged every power source on Earth to explode when drained. And worse, they had begun deliberately targeting his ship with overloaded reactors. "Every energy source on this primitive world has been weaponized," Voros reported in disbelief. "They are using their own power infrastructure as guided missiles. When I attempt to drain energy, they deliberately overload their reactors and channel the explosion directly into my vessel." The Shadow Collective's greatest advantage had become their greatest weakness. Their dependence on draining enemy energy meant that every engagement with human forces resulted in nuclear explosions, channeled directly into their ships. As the third day of combat reached its climax, the 8 commanders of the Galactic Dominion made a discovery that shattered their understanding of warfare. They were not just losing to a primitive species, they were being systematically hunted to extinction by beings who had turned fury into a military science. Emergency evacuation protocols ordered Commander Thrix as the reality of their situation became undeniable. "All Dominion forces withdraw to minimum safe distance. We need to reassess whether conquest of this system is achievable." But withdrawal was proving more difficult than advance. Human forces had learned to track alien vessels using their own navigation systems, and Earth's orbital defenses were now actively pursuing retreating ships. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity's fury was far from satisfied. 6 months after the failed invasion, the wreckage of 8 alien warships orbited Earth like metallic monuments to the galaxy's greatest military miscalculation. Admiral Patricia Wells stood in the observation deck of humanity's first interstellar vessel, built from salvaged Dominion technology, but powered by human determination, and an unshakable resolve to ensure this could never happen again. The final battle had lasted only 18 hours after the Galactic Dominion commanders ordered their retreat. But retreat proved impossible when human forces revealed their ultimate strategic surprise. They had been reverse engineering alien faster-than-light technology throughout the entire conflict, and Earth's supposedly primitive industrial capacity had been secretly producing interstellar pursuit vessels. Commander Thrix discovered the horror of being hunted across star systems when human warships began appearing at every Dominion retreat. Point. How are these primitives achieving faster-than-light travel? He demanded of his tactical officers as Earth vessels materialized around his flagship. Analysis indicates they have reverse-engineered our quantum displacement drives, came the reply. However, their implementation appears to be more efficient than our original design specifications. The truth was even more disturbing from the alien perspective. Humanity had not only copied alien technology, but improved upon it through typical human approaches to engineering, redundancy, over-engineering, and the willingness to sacrifice elegance for raw effectiveness. Dr. Rodriguez had led the faster-than-light development program using principles that violated every rule of efficient engineering the Dominion understood. "We don't need elegant solutions," she had explained to her team. "We need solutions that work even when everything goes wrong. Build everything twice as strong as necessary and add 3 backup systems." The result was human starships that could outrun, outfight, and outlast alien vessels designed by civilizations with thousands of years more advanced technology. Not because human technology was superior, but because human engineering philosophy assumed everything would break and planned accordingly. Shard Prime Nexus experienced the final humiliation of the crystal assembly when his flagship, crippled by harmonic resonance weapons, was boarded by human assault teams using nothing more sophisticated than shaped explosive charges and mechanical tools. "Impossible," he transmitted as human soldiers cut through his crystalline bulkheads. "Our crystal matrices should be impervious to primitive cutting tools." Captain Michael Torres led the boarding action with equipment that would have been familiar to industrial workers from the previous century: plasma torches, diamond-tipped cutting wheels, and hydraulic jacks. "Sometimes the old ways work best," he told his team as they carved their way through alien defenses that had been designed to resist energy weapons and technological attacks. The psychological impact on surviving Dominion forces was devastating. Their most advanced defensive systems were being defeated by humans using tools that belonged in construction sites rather than military arsenals. It was technological humiliation on a scale that challenged their entire understanding of warfare. Elder Scion Mentis of the Mind Collective suffered perhaps the most complete defeat when he attempted one final telepathic assault on human command centers. Instead of breaking human resistance, the psychic attack triggered what Dr. Gutierrez later described as species-wide cognitive warfare response. Every human mind on Earth seemed to focus simultaneously on projecting a single thought toward the alien telepath, a collective expression of rage, defiance, and absolute refusal to surrender that overwhelmed Mentis's consciousness like a telepathic tsunami. "The primitive minds have achieved some form of species-level telepathic coordination," he reported in his final transmission before his ship's life support systems failed. The reality was simpler and more terrifying. 8 billion angry humans thinking the same thought at the same time had created a telepathic feedback loop that the Mind Collective's most advanced practitioners had never imagined possible. Humanity had weaponized collective consciousness itself. Prime Hunter Ravek faced his own final defeat when human exoskeleton forces tracked his ship to the edge of the solar system. The Predator clan's greatest, Hunter found himself being hunted by beings who had studied his species' tactics and developed countermeasures that turned every Predator advantage into a liability. Colonel Stone's pursuit force surrounded Ravek's vessel using mechanical coordination. that exceeded even predator pack hunting instincts. "Target acquired," she reported as her squadron moved into attack formation, initiating termination protocol. The Predator warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds as the galaxy's ultimate hunters discovered what it felt like to be prey when facing enemies, who combined superior technology with pack coordination that surpassed anything in their evolutionary experience. Admiral Aquan of the Deep Current Empire met his end when human submarine forces tracked his flagship to the deepest ocean trenches, where he had sought refuge, but Earth's oceans offered no sanctuary when humanity turned the entire hydrosphere into a hunting ground. "Deploy thermal charges at maximum depth," ordered Admiral Martinez as her submarine fleet surrounded the alien vessel. "Make sure the water temperature reaches critical levels for liquid form physiology." The Deep Current flagship became a tomb as superheated water made survival impossible. For beings whose liquid nature had always been their greatest strength, Aquan's final transmission was a warning to any surviving Dominion forces. Avoid the water world at all costs. The humans have turned their entire planet into a weapon, Forge Master. Torque's hybrid consciousness fragmented completely when human biomechanical warfare agents caused his organic components to reject his mechanical augmentations. The Machine Syndicate's perfect integration of biology and technology collapsed, as rejection viruses spread through his ship's hybrid systems like a technological plague. System failure cascade initiated, reported his failing tactical computers, organic components rejecting mechanical interface, consciousness fragmentation imminent. Torque's death was particularly horrifying from the Dominion perspective because it proved that humanity could defeat beings who represented the ultimate fusion of biology and technology. If hybrid consciousness could be destroyed by primitive biowarfare agents, what hope did purely organic or mechanical species have? Wraith Lord Voros experienced perhaps the most ironic death when his energy-draining abilities became the mechanism of his destruction. Human forces had rigged a massive fusion reactor to overload when drained, creating an explosion that channeled directly into his shadow ship through his own power absorption systems. Energy feedback exceeding containment parameters, his ship's systems reported in the final seconds. Recommendation: immediate disconnection from external power sources. But disconnecting from external energy was impossible for a being whose entire existence depended on draining power from other sources. Voros died as his greatest strength became his fatal weakness, destroyed by the very ability that had made him feared across the galaxy. The final surrender came when the surviving Dominion commanders realized that retreat was impossible, victory was unachievable, and their only choice was between death and humiliation. Commander Thrix transmitted the first unconditional surrender in Galactic Dominion history. "We acknowledge defeat," his message began. "The species designation humanity is to be classified as a galactic-level threat. All Dominion forces are ordered to avoid this system permanently." President Maria Santos received the alien surrender from her office in the newly constructed Global Defense Headquarters. Her response was broadcast to every surviving member of the Galactic Dominion and recorded for transmission throughout the galaxy. "Your surrender is acknowledged," she announced. "But understand this: Earth is now under human protection. Any species that threatens this world will face the same fury you have experienced. We are no longer a civilization that can be conquered. We are a force that will defend our home with whatever means necessary." Dr. Liu completed her final report on the Dominion War from her laboratory, now expanded into a galactic xenobiology research center. "The enemy made a fundamental error in strategic assessment," she wrote. "They evaluated human technology and capabilities but failed to analyze human psychology. They expected us to behave like every other species they had conquered, with fear, desperation, and eventual surrender. Instead, they encountered a species that responds to existential threats not with submission but with adaptation, innovation, and escalating aggression. They brought advanced technology to fight a war of conquest. We brought evolution itself to fight a war of survival." The galaxy had learned a lesson that would echo through interstellar politics for centuries. Some species grew stronger when threatened, and humanity was foremost among them. The 8 aliens had demanded submission, and found instead a fury that burned hotter than stars and refused to be extinguished. Earth's orbital shipyards now produced vessels that combined alien technology with human engineering principles. Not the most elegant ships in the galaxy, but certainly the most reliable, most heavily armed, and most likely to keep fighting even when everything went wrong. Because humans had learned that in a hostile universe, paranoid over-engineering was often the difference between survival and extinction. The wreckage of the Dominion fleet would orbit Earth for generations, a reminder to any species considering aggression against humanity. Some worlds could be conquered through superior technology. Others required understanding the spirit of those who defended them. And some species, when pushed beyond their breaking point, revealed capabilities that no strategic assessment could predict. The 8 aliens had learned too late that humanity's greatest weapon was not technology or tactics, but the absolute refusal to accept defeat. They had demanded submission from a species that would rather die fighting than live in chains, and they had paid the price for that miscalculation with their fleets, their lives, and their empires. Reputation. Earth stood victorious, scarred but unbroken, defended by beings who had proven that sometimes the most dangerous enemy is the one who has nothing left to lose and everything to fight for.